Welcome to the 359. I'm Joni Salzman.
I'm Shara Tipkin.
So, Apple's butterfly switch keyboards, or as Shara's MacBook would probably type it, the butterfly keyboards, they're getting fixed again.
Yes.
After years of complaints that keys don't type or they type too much with duplicate letters, Apple is making some of its biggest changes yet. It's making the replacement program free for basically everyone that has one of these malfunctioning keyboards. And it's changed the material that it's using in the switch, hopefully to avoid double typing letters. Do you think what's your gut instinct about a material change actually fixing all the problems with this key, with these keys?
It's really hard to know because they won't tell us what the material is. So it's hard to evaluate whether this is going to make a huge difference. I would guess that ultimately they're going to have to completely redesign this keyboard again.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what do you think about the fact that they're replacing all these keyboards for free? How significant is that really?
Well, it's with some caveats. It's not like you can just go in and be like, hey, I have one of these old keyboards, give me a different keyboard.
Right.
It has to be if your keyboard is malfunctioning.
Right.
So they say a lot of people are not seeing this issue, but I've seen the issue. Other reviewers at the Wall Street Journal and other places have seen the issue. So it's not just isolated. It does seem like quite a few people do see this issue where it may double type letters or not type them at all or just various other things. But you do have to have a problem with your keyboard for it to be replaced. And it's only for a certain time frame. So it's for four years after you buy it.
Okay.
Which, if you think about it, that's kind of the life of a computer anyway, give or take a little bit. And they had first introduced this keyboard replacement program a year ago, but it was more limited in the number of computers that it covered. And now they're basically saying if you buy any of our old computers or you buy any of our brand new computers that we just announced yesterday and it malfunctions, you can replace it.
Right.
So, that kind of gives consumers a little bit peace of mind because that you can buy one of these and if there's problems, it can be fixed for free. But also, it kind of raises some questions about how confident they actually feel in this keyboard.
Right.
If from the very get-go of selling it, they're going to say, hey, you can replace it for free.
Right. So you think the writing's on the wall. They're going to just have to totally redesign.
I think they're going to have to.
Do you have any idea? Do you have any idea like when that could happen?
I mean, it takes a couple years, I think, to kind of completely redo this. But we don't know if they've started on this a long time ago, what it was. We also don't know what computers are going to look like, frankly. Everybody's looking for iPads and Macs to kind of merge, which Apple has said they're not. But they're going to be making, mobile apps work on Macs. And so they're kind of getting closer to that. So, I mean, who even knows what these things are going to look like in a while?
Right.
The whole reason they did it was to make these like thinner and lighter. I would take like another millimeter thickness to have
keyboards that actually work.
Yeah.
Okay. Next up, Qualcomm. A U.S. judge ruled today that the powerful chip maker is, in fact, too powerful. In a ruling that agreed with the U.S. Federal Trade Commission, the judge said Qualcomm suppressed competitors for wireless chips and exploited its dominance to charge unnecessary licensing fees. So in your coverage, you've said that this basically means Qualcomm's going to have to change its entire business model.
Yeah. So, Qualcomm sells chips, but a huge part of their business is licensing their technology to handset makers. So they don't license to competitors like Intel or MediaTek. They license based on the entire value of a phone because their patents don't just cover the chip. They cover other things that maybe aren't covered in just the processor. So basically, this judge is saying they have to license to chip makers. It means they could be making a lot less on royalty fees. Anybody that they currently have a contract with, that may have to be renegotiated.
Right.
So this could just have, huge implications for Qualcomm and how they run their business.
Do you think that ultimately will it mean that devices that consumers are paying for, will those prices come down because of something like this?
Definitely not. There's no way.
Guys.
Yeah, sorry. We basically found out in these trials that Apple, under the previous deal, was paying Qualcomm $7 per iPhone.
Yeah.
There's no way that Apple's going to shave off $3 off each iPhone because of this. Or, and Apple just reached a deal with Qualcomm last month. Yeah. So, and we're just seeing prices go up across the board. So there's no way this is actually going to have any sort of impact for a consumer, which is too bad because that is one of the things that the judge said is that this ultimately hurt consumers and caused higher phone prices.
Right.
But we're stuck with those prices.
It's not even going to change it for the people it's supposed to help.
Yeah.
Finally, Oculus released its long-awaited Quest headset yesterday. VR has been a victim of hype ever since Facebook bought Oculus for billions of dollars years ago. But it seems like the people who have tried Quest seem cautiously optimistic that this one might actually be what gets people, normal humans, interested in virtual reality. You can read more about Oculus and all these other stories on CNET.com. I'm Joni Salzman.
I'm Shara Tipkin.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us for the recording of the audio podcast. You can subscribe to that using the links in the description below on a number of lovely platforms that we'll tell you all about later on. Thanks for putting up with us for the impromptu hiatus. We had a bit of a hectic early portion of the week, but we're back. Thanks, as always, for being patient. You know, it's hard to do a daily podcast, but luckily we have such a wonderful round table of people like Joan and Shara, and I guess Roger, but not always. But yeah, anyways, let's go ahead and take some questions and comments from the chat. First off, I just want to make note that in my ongoing geeky trivia, 5/22 was the date that the Ethernet was invented. The Ethernet cable was invented. Also, apparently the release date of Pac-Man back in 1980. So any gamers in the crowd, let us know. Starting off, the first question we got is from our good friend Matthew Datcher. He says, why does Apple take so long to fix problems? Apple has become one of the great gaslighters during this process.
I agree. Why does it take so long for Apple to admit they've done something wrong?
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. Like, you know, Apple creates these products, it stands behind them. You know, there's lots of theories. Like, you know, I've seen people say, you know, if Tim Cook had a Mac that was double typing the T every time he typed it, this would have been fixed years ago. Mm-hmm. It's really hard to say. You know, they maintain that this is just a small number. But it's also hard, like when you kind of go all in on something, like they rolled this out in, I think, 2015. It's on all of their laptops.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to go back and be like, oops, our bad. We're gonna
put the screwing up genie back in the bottle.
Yeah. You know, and they have redesigned it, and every redesign I think we're on the third generation, and every redesign they think that that's going to solve the problem.
Yeah.
It just hasn't. So, you know, hopefully this new material will actually solve it, because these are, you know, very thin and light computers at this point, and part of that is because of the keyboard.
Right.
So we're just, I don't know.
Yeah. Can you compare Apple's response to this snafu to other ones? Like, is there kind of precedent for how it deals with these kind of problems?
Yeah, it does not deal well with problems. I mean, if you think back, I think it was either the iPhone 4 or the 4S. I don't remember which one it was. It had an antenna problem.
Yeah.
Where it had to basically
Right.
give out free cases. And at that time,
Right.
Steve Jobs said, you're holding it wrong.
Right.
Like, you're holding your phone wrong.
Yeah.
Which is just, for a user, just ludicrous. Like, you're
Right.
blaming me for this problem in your design.
Right.
You know, they've done other things like that, but we've also seen under Tim Cook, when Apple does make big mistakes, that he tries to resolve it really quickly. So like with Apple Maps, I don't know if everybody remembers when that came out. It was a total disaster. It was like bridges to nowhere, and like it was terrible. And you know, he fired the person who was in charge of software, iOS software. He publicly apologized. He, you know, worked really hard, and now a lot of people really like Apple Maps. Like, it's really improved a lot from where it was. But yeah, the track record's kind of
Johnny Ive hasn't been fired. That's for sure.
I mean, of course not.
No.
Like, yeah,
We can't lose his aluminium voice.
yeah,
In sizzle videos.
yeah.
From Matthew Datcher as well, expanding on this, how onerous is the keyboard repair process for Apple Butterfly keyboards?
I think it varies. In some cases, they can replace one key, but I think in a lot of cases, they have to replace the entire keyboard because of how it's designed. Anybody who's had an older computer knows you can kind of just like, with older keys, you can just pop it off and stick it back on, you know, if there's an issue. You can't do that with these. It breaks the key. That is one of the big things that Apple said they're changing, or not the process itself, but how quick they're going to get it done. So now you typically have to go into an Apple store. You leave your computer there for several days, you know, if not longer, for them to repair it. Apple said they're going to be speeding up that process. It doesn't mean necessarily that you're going to walk in, get it fixed, and walk out. Like, they weren't able to give any details about how long it'll take because it's really going to vary based on, each issue, each store. But in Apple stores now, the geniuses are going to prioritize keyboard repairs. So that's going to be something that's like fast tracked. They're really going to be working hard on it. And if you have one of the newer computers and you have issues and need it fixed, they're going to replace it with the new keyboard.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're just going to be getting the older keyboard. But I think that's only for the newer computers.
Right. Yeah. Can you bring it back multiple times?
I'm not sure,
if you have
but I would
persistent
assume so.
Yeah.
Like, I would assume so. I don't know that for sure. I don't know anybody who's had multiple problems, and I'm not sure what Apple has said about that.
Yeah.
But I think they're really trying to give people peace of mind with this, and
Right.
like, they know people have problems with it. They also say it's not that widespread, so I think they're going to do whatever they can to keep Mac customers happy, and will really try to work with people to make sure that your keyboard's working.
Yeah.
So I want to shift gears back over to Qualcomm. This is a pretty landmark case. Shar, could you give us a couple of maybe predictions of what this is going to mean for international research and development and technological business going forward?
Yeah, it's really interesting because the federal government, the DOJ, got involved kind of late on this. We've even seen Trump talk about this. He's worried. So when it comes to the mobile chip market, it's basically Qualcomm from the U.S., MediaTek from Taiwan, and then Samsung from Korea. Those are kind of the three big guys. Intel was in this market, but after Apple and Qualcomm reached a settlement, Intel said it's not going to make 5G chips anymore.
Right.
So basically, when it comes to 5G or mobile processors, it really is Qualcomm. They're so far ahead of everyone else when it comes to 5G. So the government kind of weighed in saying, hey, this is, if there's a negative ruling or really particularly difficult things that Qualcomm has to do, this is going to hurt our competition in the market.
In the global marketplace.
In the global marketplace, it's going to mean we're late with 5G, all of these things. And it's interesting because the time of the FTC alleged all of these issues kind of that were happening around the same time that I started covering semiconductors. So it was interesting because there was a time where I was covering the mobile chip guys, and there were so many of them. It was Intel, there was Broadcom, there was NVIDIA was making mobile chips, Texas Instruments, basically everybody, Marvell, all of these companies. And they all just gradually left the market, which the judge has agreed was because of Qualcomm's
suppressive.
Well, Qualcomm had this policy where they wouldn't give a handset maker a license or they wouldn't give them chips unless they also had a licensing fee, unless they paid a licensing fee. And they're saying, Qualcomm was shady in those dealings. And I think it's hard to say whether this means we're going to be way behind in 5G. Like, this is going to go through the appeals process.
Right.
I talked to an attorney who said the Ninth Circuit is really popular for filing these appeals. So their average and how long it takes to come back with a ruling is 2 to 3 years.
Yikes.
This is such a big case that it's likely that they're going to fast track it and look at it much earlier.
Right.
But still, it's probably going to be a year from when that's filed to when there's actually a ruling. So in that time, lots of things could happen. Like 5G is going to be pretty widespread at that point.
Yeah.
It is just hard to say right now kind of what the implications are going forward.
Yeah.
Qualcomm will say, oh, this is going to hurt our ability to compete. The other guys are going to say, oh, this is going to help our ability to compete.
Yeah. Yeah.
So kind of tacked on to the end of this article was a header called Making Nice with Apple. So as far as the relationship between Qualcomm and Apple goes forward, they're going to play like it's real nice, but there's probably not super smooth sailing behind the curtain there, is it?
I don't know. Kind of the indications that I've gotten from talking to sources is that, as soon as this deal was signed, they're immediately working together on getting 5G in an iPhone. It was kind of like we were fighting.
In the blink of an eyelash.
Yeah.
Between like strangling each other in court to being like,
yeah, we're buddies again.
Yay!
Yeah, I mean, it's in both of their best interests to work together. It really is. Like, if you look at every phone coming out, almost every single phone that's going to be coming with 5G this year, for sure, and probably next year, almost all of them are going to be using Qualcomm modems. And that means, that Qualcomm, LG, OnePlus, all of these companies, they're going to have 5G iPhones this year.
Yeah.
5G phones, not iPhones. 5G Android phones this year. And Apple has to have a 5G iPhone at some point. It can't sit out this market forever because that's where we're all going.
Yeah.
Do they need one this year? No, not really. It's still kind of new for 5G. Next year, I think every phone that we're going to be buying is probably going to be 5G. And so it's really important for Apple to work with Qualcomm because that's basically their only option. Like MediaTek's not really an option. Samsung isn't really an option either.
Yeah.
And for that matter, Apple and Samsung were fighting for a decade, basically. Yeah. And now, they're working together again.
Yeah.
We saw them at CES for, iTunes on Samsung TVs.
Right.
But, yeah, so, I think that it's in both of their best interests to work well together. Like Apple is one of the biggest mobile companies in the world. Qualcomm is the biggest mobile chip maker. They need each other.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as the ruling for Qualcomm and the forthcoming price reduction, is that at all related to the Huawei ban?
No.
Yeah.
No, it's not related to the Huawei ban. Also, Huawei is one of the few companies that makes its own chips. Mm-hmm. So it does buy some processors for Qualcomm, but I think that's more kind of some of its mid-range phones. Its main high-end phones, it really has been designing its own processors. Yeah. And so I don't think these are not related.
They're not related, but I'm curious what your thoughts on this are. I'm curious, one of the things that China's government has sort of kind of spun this difficulty around Huawei is that, well, now this gives us more opportunity to invest in our own chip industry because China hasn't been competitive in chips.
Yeah.
So maybe Qualcomm being forced to be less dominant could give Chinese chip makers a way to edge into the market?
It definitely could. It definitely could. It's hard.
They're not directly related, but interrelated in a way.
Yeah, they're like the judge's ruling had nothing to do with what was happening with Huawei, but they have implications for each other.
For sure.
Is fair to say. I think that the U.S. strategy of not letting American companies work with Huawei or ARM Holdings. It's this like little known chip designer, and basically every chip is based on its technology. It's based in the UK, and SoftBank, a Japanese company, bought it, but it does most of its IP development here in the US. So it also is included in this ban of working with Huawei. And Huawei designs its chips using ARM technology. So it's just kind of all interrelated. But yeah, I mean, it's so interesting because there's just so much going on in this area right now.
This is like Shara's happy place where she can talk about nerdy chip stuff.
I know, yes.
I'm half expecting like a tinfoil hat to come out. Like I've never seen anybody go down the rabbit hole that deep on
it's
the show.
It's not tinfoil hat at all. She like knows her stuff.
No, you're right. You're
no
right.
Conspiracy going on.
Tinfoil hat does imply in conspiracy, but like at least a pocket protector and glasses.
There we go.
Yes.
Wow, I had no idea though. Like this is actually very beneficial to me as like an idiot consumer who works at the tech company but doesn't know jack.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like as a consumer, you don't think about the chips.
No.
Like for decades, you haven't thought about the chips, but they're integral to a lot of the services and capabilities of your phones.
Yeah,
so
I mean, you would have
matter.
nothing, and that was a big argument that Qualcomm made in the FTC trial and this was an argument they were going to make in the Apple trial, that an iPhone without Qualcomm chip, without the modem, is just an iPod Touch. It's not an iPhone. It's just this, smart thing, but it's not an iPhone. It's not a smartphone without the chips, without this technology.
Right.
Without all the ingredients, the recipe isn't the same.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I'm going to take a minute to process this. We have a few minutes left, so if anybody's got any good questions, go ahead and send them in now.
I'll also put it out there if anyone wants to talk about Game of Thrones, because we haven't had podcasts since the finale. I'm more than willing to take questions about Game of Thrones. I'm just gonna put it out there.
Isn't the generally accepted unwritten rule about spoilers is the two-week window?
Is it 2 weeks?
I think it's
don't know.
2 weeks. I think it's 2 weeks.
Okay.
And sit on that one. I'm sure we'll come back to
My
it.
spoiler-free review was meh. So
I think everybody's spoiler-free review was meh when I'm looking around as a not Game of Thrones watcher. But we should maybe talk a little bit about Oculus in the last few minutes. I haven't tried it yet. Actually, well, I think I tried Rift once upon a time. Mm-hmm. Joey made me try it in the lab. Sounds way more forceful than it should have. But I haven't really had a lot of experience with VR. Has anyone here tried Go?
Yeah, so I've tried Rift.
No, Quest. Sorry, we're on Quest now.
I've tried Rift and Go and Quest. I got to take home a review unit yesterday. It was released yesterday. Scott, our reviewer, has had it for a couple weeks. He says it kind of feels magical. Like I said, there's kind of like this degree of optimism among people. Optimism maybe isn't even the right word, but kind of like degree of curiosity about whether or not this could be the headset that gets over all the things that kept people away from virtual reality. Not all of them. You still have to put on a kind of dorky looking headset.
Still
There's no
pay a
getting
lot of
around
money.
that. But it gets like I took it home yesterday and I would equate the setup with it to when you get a new phone and you have to kind of go through these stages of setup, like connecting to your Wi-Fi, but the setup of it where you kind of set up a grid, you don't have to do anything other than just like point your controller around in a square where you want it to be, and you can kind of go off and run. My husband, even though I watched and done so much VR in my life, my husband's basically done none. And so I was like, do you want to try it? And he had a great time. We had it up and running in 20 minutes and he spent half an hour before we were like, okay, we need to go to bed.
Would you call it intuitive? I think that's a lot of the barriers that keep people away from it. It seems very daunting and intimidating.
I mean, I think it's as intuitive if you've never played a console game and you pick up a console controller. I think that wearing the headset and looking around, all those things are naturally intuitive to humans. It's the controllers that make it a little bit trickier, knowing which triggers to pull, which buttons to press for. It takes a while to get that instinct to like when you press the middle finger trigger, that's how you pick things up. It just takes a little time to get that, but I feel like that's the same if you're trying any sort of new controller system that you're not acquainted with.
And then the unfortunate side effect is that once you finally get used to that, you go to pick up like a banana at the deli and you just do this.
I don't know. I haven't had that experience quite yet, but I haven't spent hours upon
I bet
hours
Scott
upon hours
has.
in VR. But the thing I will say about the controllers, even though there is a learning curve for figuring out how to make things work, the capabilities that the thing about Quest that's really interesting is that you don't have to have a PC. There's nothing to hook up. You just take it out of the box, put it on, you have your controllers, and the controllers unlock like fun more than any other kind of controller on a wireless headset before. Because before, controllers on these wireless ones, the ones that were easy to set up, they couldn't really do much, really. Though this is like these are full gaming controllers where you can do, a lot of the creators have the ability to let you do the same sort of capabilities that you would have on a PC based headset. So yeah, I feel like it can kind of unlock fun in a way that other things couldn't at a lower price and like easy setup, which is, I don't know. Those are big things for VR. They hadn't had it before.
And would you say, though, the learning curve is arguably a necessary thing? It's probably a good thing for people to kind of get imbibed into a ecosystem on a number of different platforms. But would you say the learning curve is shrinking as far as like introductions to virtual reality?
Yes. I would say it's shrinking. I would say like the learning curve is the same the learning curve on a Quest is like going to be more challenging than on like a Google Cardboard where you literally just throw your phone and you put it on your face and you can start looking around. But the reward that you get for having that slightly more difficult learning curve is like far reaches away from what you get with like a Google Cardboard or one of the more rudimentary headsets. Does that make sense? So the learning curve isn't getting any like whatever the term you're supposed to use for curves. Shorter, leaner, less curvy. It's not getting any less curvy, but you're getting more for what you can do more quicker.
The rewards are greater.
The rewards are greater, yeah, I think.
And Storm King wants to know what the pricing is looking like and what do we know is coming for apps and games?
Oh, great, yeah. So, well, the price you get, and correct Let me make sure that I get those right. It's $399. I know it's $399, and I believe that gives you not only the headset but the controllers. My controllers came in box with the headset. I think you get, and it'd be lame if you had only the headset without the controllers. So $400 basically for headset controllers, and there's 50 title launch games. The most popular and buzzed out right now is Beat Saber, and it's totally addictive. It's kind of like a Dance Dance Revolution music-based game.
Meets Star Wars.
And yes, Vader Immortal is also very buzzed about. It's the first episode of, I don't know how many they're going to do, but it's the first episode of a Star Wars, universe-based interaction. You get to go. I got to try that one yesterday too. There's like a narrative element to it, and then there's also a lightsaber dojo that you can go to anytime, and you can like try to fight off lasers at you and like hack at robots that attack you. So if that's your thing, then you'll like that one.
I believe, as history would say, it's a lot of people's thing.
Right? Yes.
Okay,
Billions in box office dollars, right?
On our way out the door, let's have a fun one. What smartphones, this one's coming from Angelo's 522, what smartphones do you think Game of Thrones characters would have had?
Oh, jeez.
Oh my God. Well, Bran would be like, I don't use a smartphone. I know everything. I don't need to Google anything, right?
Yeah.
Who needs a smartphone when you're the three-eyed raven?
That's really funny. I don't know. I mean, I feel like the Night's Watcher is all like Android. They're like, the Cersei probably had an iPhone, the most expensive one.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
10S.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would Daenerys' iPhone be?
Would it be
Maybe she should
bedazzled?
have like OnePlus or something, like totally like unexpected,
Yeah.
a little counterculture.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Windows Phone.
Oh my God. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. Maybe the worst characters. Who's the worst characters? The Greyjoys have these Windows phones.
All right, and who rolls back to the party with like a classic flip phone that's still hanging on by a thread?
I
Or
think
better
Arya,
yet, a
if she has a phone,
3310.
she has a flip phone.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think so.
She would flip it from hand to hand.
Yeah, exactly.
Davos Seaworth, I could see him like having
Yeah.
like clipped into his
Yeah. Oh,
belt
100%.
for some
Yeah.
reason. Yeah.
Yeah,
It
he's
looks like a
crotchety.
compass or something.
He's got like are you saying he's got like a dad belt?
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Wow. Maybe I should try this show out.
We're gonna redo the 8th season, but they all are connected with 5G phones. We're
I
gonna
mean,
fulfill that petition.
if the Starbucks cup could show up, why the hell not?
Right.
We're going to launch a Kickstarter right now.
No problem.
GoFundMe.
All right, that's perfect place to land. Nice note to go out on. Thanks everybody for joining us again. Thanks for being patient while we're off the last couple of days, but we're back as far as we know. Who the hell knows anymore? But thanks for joining. We'll see you tomorrow. Joan, you want to take us on out?
Yeah, the 359 is available on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, FeedBurner, Google Play Podcasts, Google Podcasts, not Google Play Podcasts. You can get it at Google, the Amazon Echo, and CNET.com.
Take care, folks. See you tomorrow.